The leftist censorship of James Lindsay hurts us all, and I'll explain why in a moment. But before I do, if you're new to this channel, please be sure to comment, to like, to share, subscribe if it so pleases you. Now let us get into this message. So my friends, as many of you know, James Lindsay, the provocateur, the public intellectual, perhaps one of the more eminent and brilliant minds on the issue of postmodernism and wokeness in our current intellectual life, was banned on Twitter, permanently banned, ostensibly for an exchange he had with a professor, Alessandro Caraballo, I hope I'm saying that correctly, in which there was a back and forth, and James called them a child sexualization expert, and all of a sudden he's banned. Now, I don't for a second believe that that's the only reason why he was banned. James has been poking the nest for a very long time, as someone said recently, and it was only a matter of time before someone like him had gotten banned. In fact, when I was interviewing him, he told me that he was like Neo in the Matrix, and how he acted on Twitter was a means of punching through the current dialogue and getting his message across in a way that is unique, his own, and effective.
What they want is the institutions of society, as they understand them, have been rewarding them. They've been giving them status. They've been giving them that's exactly what you were just mentioning. They have status tied up in the idea that they have institutional affiliation. They've been given a fellowship. They've been given a grant. They've been given money. Usually it's not about money as much, though, as it is about status. It's about, because these are usually, fairly middle class, comfortable people, mostly, who are less worried about whether or not they're going to stay comfortable and more worried about whether or not they've got the right bona fides on their CV, if they're going to get invited to the right parties, if they're going to be able to hobnob with the right people and play the game and rat race. They want to be plugged into the matrix because the matrix is comfortable for them. And when they encounter people such as myself, if I might be so bold, who have, red pilled, so I've stepped out of the matrix, but then I go back into the matrix, that's Twitter, and I act as though the rules are different. I act as though I can jump from one building to another. I can bend the spoon. There is no spoon. I can dodge a bullet here and there. If I have to stop some bullets, why not? Because it's pretend. It's the matrix. It's once you understand it and you grasp the nature of what's going on, the rules are different for you. That disrupts the ability of the people who realize that the whole thing is it's not as satisfying as Cypher or whatever his name is says to eat the fake steak if you actually know it's fake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
Oh, no.
And people such as myself acting the way that I act upset that entire order. So they call me things like the R word. They tell me that I'm a public menace to society or something like this. That's one particular country clubber. They call me all kinds of names. They put me down a lot. And, I didn't really, it's a hilarious tweet that Trump did a long time ago. And he was like, something like that he loves all of his haters and losers. They can't help that they were born fucked up. And it's like, there's a pretty serious level where it's just like, I'm not saying that about these people, but I get it. It's like creature comforts, but it's like societal creature comforts, and they want to preserve those. And so people like myself, end up, it's in a sense, we were just talking about decentralization and deconstruction. It's like deconstructing that facade as well. Yeah. And, people don't like having their own facade deconstructed.
And ultimately, just like Neo, James has to face agents and has to face people who are trying to shut him down. But ultimately, this is not a video about James Lindsay per se, because James Lindsay is only the victim of a broader trend that is currently happening in society, that has been happening for many, many years now, ever since the relationship between the digital world and the political world has cemented as the 21st century has progressed. He is a victim of the censorious activities of big tech institutions. And there are plenty of examples of this throughout the past few years, whether it be with Google calling themselves the good censor, where a bunch of Google executives said that they were going to come together and base the internet on a sort of European style of management that is not emphasize unfettered free speech or liberty, but instead emphasizes dignity. And of course, they said to Ted Cruz, Google executives said to Ted Cruz when they were interrogated on this issue, that they were indeed this. Whether it be the fact that Google has also been deranking conservative websites and ideas in the search results for a very long time, going all the way back 2016 with Breitbart, whether it's Alex Jones getting banned, whether it's Milo Yiannopoulos getting banned, regardless, whether it's all these different people who have been banned and suppressed on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, there is a large problem within our current cultural discourse surrounding censorship. And the people who are doing this censorship think themselves wise because they are doing it. They feel morally justified. If you believe what those Google executives said and admitted to Ted Cruz, they feel morally justified for protecting the people who are allegedly hurt by certain kinds of commentary. This is the thinking around leftist notions of group identity and group victimhood. This idea that there are certain groups of people that have been harmed and deserve protection, special protection from certain institutions. This is the point that Mary Matsuda made in her work, Words That Wound, where she had basically talked about banning certain kinds of speech because it can harm minorities. So this has been a large trend for a while. But censorship isn't just bad because it drowns out certain voices. And again, it's not just bad because it happens to our favorite thinker or our favorite talker. Censorship is bad because it hits at the very core of what it means to be a human being. Now, I'm about to say something here that's going to be a little bit different and a little bit new for many of you. So I would encourage you to stick with me. But this is the point that we have to drive home. Because if this is not the point that's driven home, then the same tired arguments will be continuing to be used against political censorship. Going all the way back to Areopagitica, which was a work which inspired Western political notions of free speech and free expression and free thought. This has been a conversation happening for a very, very long time. But there is an angle to it that not many people are necessarily getting. Censorship is bad, my friends, because it restricts the highest form of expression known to man. So let's start with this idea here. There is something called the soul. If you're a religious person, you may know what the soul, you may know how, you have an idea of what the soul is. If you're an atheist, that word may make you cringe and reach back and say, what is this guy about to say to me? What I'm about to say to you is not at all religious. It is more, as actually a really secular description of a phenomenon that is evidently happening. The word soul comes from the etymology, the etymological root, Old English, S-A-W-O-L, Saul. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I'm probably not. And what that meant was essentially the animating essence of existence, the thing that undergirds life. And the soul has been a mystery for so long to people. For the purposes of our conversation here, following with the etymology of the word soul, the soul should be understood as processes and things that happen within us as human beings that are not immediately evident or apparent to other people. So, for example, emotions would be an example of the soul's process because our emotions are not immediately evident to people unless we show them our emotions. Speech is also an extension of the soul because unless we speak, speech relies dormant. So the soul is essentially that which allows us to govern ourselves, which is not immediately apparent. It is the sort of principle undergirding our more evident physical properties. So if the soul is the principle that allows us to govern ourselves and contains things that are not immediately apparent to us, we have to now ask ourselves, how does the soul interact with politics? Particularly, how does the soul, in this case, interact with censorship? Speech, being an extension of the soul, human speech, is the highest form of expression known to any creature on this earth because any other form of communication does not have the sort of universality that human speech does. Even animals can grasp certain words if they are trained to, obviously. But human speech has been one of the most well-refined tools for us to understand reality. In every single language in the world, throughout world history, there have been certain words that have been universally translated. There have been certain words that meant the same thing across cultures which had no relationship or connection with each other. Language, human language, is certainly universal by that measure, and speech is a way for that universality to be shown. Speech is also a way for us to understand the world as it is and then communicate that understanding to each other. If you don't have speech, you don't have the ability to understand reality. So, when censorship comes into the equation, what you're doing is you're restricting the highest form of expression known to man, and you're therefore limiting my ability to understand reality, and by limiting my ability to understand reality, you're limiting my ability to understand things that are necessary for life, to understand where good morals come from, to understand how to have good character, to understand the proper workings of certain institutions and ideas. And when I cannot communicate by the faculty that I naturally have, at the risk of being unduly restricted by someone or something, I become someone who is not fully interacting with what we have around us. This is the danger of censorship. Censorship does not merely drown out bad ideas or good ideas or whatever. Censorship quite literally attacks the very core of our humanity by restricting what makes us human. In other words, by restricting the soul. Now, there's a few words to say onto this. A retort to this argument may say, well, Christian, speech is this thing we use to communicate, so wouldn't that mean that yelling fire in a crowded theater is an example of speech? Well, let me refine my definition. Human speech is not merely speech in general. Animals have the ability of speech in their own languages and obviously their own ways. They can communicate with each other and they understand each other. But human speech is defined by its ability to use reason, our ability to think logically, to formulate words, formulate the structures of words, make them make sense internally, and have them correspond to reality. So, for example, if I say there is a book over there, that reflects my ability to process the understanding that there is a book, then also process the differences within my current area, the differences of location within my current area, and then communicate those things effectively so someone else can understand that. That is powerful, my friends. The fact that you can say words and it can translate in the mind of someone else almost instantaneously, depending on the person, and they can get that. That is the building block of civilization. And this may seem very hard to grasp at first, but when you grasp it, when you understand it, you'll just see how magnificent human civilization is compared to every other civilization of animals and species on this planet. But censorship says speech, even speech that accords to proper reasoning, that is logical, that is being used in a manner that is not injurious to your fellow man, that is not slanderous, that is still subjugated to the demands of the mob, the demands of dignity and social justice and all these other words and phrases, which in all reality cannot be analyzed critically without getting the attention of the censors. So the fact is, my friends, political censorship attacks what it means to be a human, restricts a very core important part of our humanity, and therefore tries to detach us from reality. You can take away anything a man owns, his money, his cars, his clothing, and he can still subsist. If you take away a man's ability to understand reality, he will tend to destruction, because reality is inescapable, reality is intractable, and reality is resolute. And the moment someone goes against reality, reality always wins. The moment someone goes against the law of gravity, gravity always wins. Political censorship, however, does not equip us to deal with things as they are. It rather equips someone else who has the things of how they want things to be to conform us to their idea of the world. And I don't know about you, but I rather live in the real world than live trying to be in subordination to someone's idea of the world. Political censorship has that effect, and for that reason, we should all be opposed to it. And for that reason, we should all be concerned about James Lindsay being canceled. Because the moment someone like Lindsay is canceled, no matter for what necessarily purpose, the moment he is canceled in furtherance of his duties as a thinker and a speaker, is the moment that a statement is made about one's humanity. A statement that rebels against it entirely. Some may even say this is not political censorship, this is Twitter regulating. But any censorship that happens in accordance to a political belief is political censorship. I'm not arguing that Twitter is a political entity, but I'm arguing that James Lindsay's censorship was most certainly politically motivated. Censorship, political censorship, regardless, all of it assaults the soul, and all of it must be rejected by rational, sane people of any ideology. Think on it, my friends. I love you guys so much. If you love me, please be sure to go to my Patreon, patreon.com/officialcwatson, or PayPal, officialcwatson@gmail.com. Please be sure to like this video, to comment on this video, to subscribe to this channel, to share this video. My friends, I love you guys so much, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.